Monika here, and welcome back to Cat Creations. So recently I've gotten requests for DIY trendy dresses as well as DIY summer dresses, and I figured right now you can't get more trendy than the off-the-shoulder dress. So in this tutorial I'm going to be teaching you how to make an off-the-shoulder skater dress. I love the way this dress turned out, and I really hope y'all do too, so without further ado, let's get sewing. For this project, you'll need 2 yards of a stretchy knit fabric, a pack of 1/4-inch thick elastic, and a well-fitting shirt with sleeves. To create an off-the-shoulder bodice template, first decide where on your shirt you'll want the waist of your dress to be, which is where the bodice meets the skirt, and fold the shirt up to this point. Then fold your sleeves into the center along the curved seam where the sleeve is attached to the bodice so that it looks like a cropped tank top. Now to make the off-shoulder shape, go a little more than halfway up the curve of the armholes and fold the top of the shirt above this point down out of the way so that you can't see the shoulders. And finally, fold the shirt in half along the center, and this is your bodice template. Before we start cutting, I wanted to show you a rough little diagram of where I cut each piece I'll be showing you on my fabric, so if you're not sure how to lay it all out, you can refer back to this. Fold a portion of your fabric over large enough to fit your template, and the fabric must stretch in the direction I have the arrows going. Lay the shirt down so that the center fold lines up with the fold of your fabric and pin it down. Begin cutting about 1 inch above the top edge to allow room for our elastic, then cut a 1/2 inch extra along the armhole, side, and bottom edge for seam allowance. I cut even larger on the sides because I had a thicker fabric and thought I'd need extra room, but I wound up taking this in later, so I only needed to cut a 1/2 inch extra. When you remove the template and unfold the fabric, you should have a bodice piece that looks like this, so use it to cut out a second identical bodice. Lay them together with the correct sides of the fabric facing together and pin and sew along the sides with a 1/2 inch seam allowance using a ballpoint needle and a stretch or zigzag stitch so that your seams will stretch when you stretch the fabric. At this point I tried on the bodice and discovered I needed to take it in because the sides were too loose, so to do this I stitched one side in the amount I needed, cut outside that seam to remove the extra fabric, then used that piece I cut as a guide to cut the exact same amount off of the other side. I sewed that seam down and my bodice fit much better. To make the sleeves, lay your shirt out so that the sleeve is completely flat where this top straight edge is the folded edge of your sleeve, this curved seam is the seam where the sleeve and armhole are sewn together, and this diagonal edge is the seam where the sleeve has been sewn together. Lay a sheer piece of paper down so that the straight edge lines up with the folded edge of the sleeve, and start tracing the shape along that curved seam beginning at the armpit. Once you get a little more than halfway up the curve, stop tracing and draw a straight line that connects the curve to the folded edge of the sleeve. Trace along the diagonal edge, make another straight line at your desired sleeve length, and write down where the folded edge of the sleeve was. Now you'll want to add marks a 1/2 inch larger than your pattern along the bottom edge, diagonal edge, and curved portion of the sleeve to add seam allowance, then add a whole inch extra along the top edge to add room for the elastic. Connect the lines, mark which side is the top edge of the sleeve, and cut it out and you'll have a pattern that looks like this. Fold a portion of your remaining fabric over for your sleeve, again making sure it stretches this way, and lay the pattern down so that the edge marked fold lines up with the fabric's fold. Pin it down and cut out your sleeve, then cut out a second identical sleeve. Fold your sleeve in half with the correct side of the fabric facing together and pin and sew along the diagonal edge, then repeat with the other sleeve. To attach the sleeve to the bodice, turn both pieces right side out, and I held the bodice open in one hand and the sleeve open in the other, and I matched up the 2 armpit seams together with the correct sides of the fabric facing together and the seam allowances flattened out. Pin the seams together and then line up the curved edges of the armhole and sleeve on either side of that pin and pin them together frequently. My armhole was a bit larger than the sleeve, but that's not a problem because we'll trim it down shortly. Once you've got all the sleeve and armhole pinned together, sew to attach them using the same stitch you've been using. Take your time as you sew around the curves and take extra care by adjusting the presser foot and fabric as needed to make sure you don't get any extra fabric bunched up and caught under your needle. Once the sleeve has been attached, pin and sew the other sleeve down exactly the same way. If your bodice is a bit bigger than your sleeves, like mine, trim straight across so that the sleeves and bodice line up evenly. To make a casing for our 1/4 inch elastic, turn your bodice inside out and fold the top edge over a 1/2 inch, then fold it again another 1/2 inch and pin it down. Continue double folding a 1/2 inch at a time and pinning along the top edge of the bodice, continuing around the sleeve to the other side of the bodice, and then around the other sleeve until you've gotten the entire top edge folded and pinned down. Sew the casing down, but make sure to leave a couple inch gap unsewn so we can feed the elastic through, and you'll need to sew right along the edge that's been folded and pinned down so that you create a tube for your elastic. Keep using a stretch or zigzag stitch, and remember to leave that gap open, which you can see here, and you can also see how I sewed my stitches right along that fold to create the casing. Wrap your elastic around your shoulders and pin it into place to make sure it fits snugly but not too tight. Remove the pin and then make a mark about a 1/2 inch larger than the size you need and trim it down to this size. Hook a safety pin to the end and push it through the opening in the casing, and as you feed the elastic through, be careful not to twist it. Once you've pulled it back through the opening on the other side, remove the pin and lay the two ends of the elastic on top of each other, then sew back and forth several times with a zigzag stitch. Trim off any extra elastic that hangs past the stitches and pull on your shirt a few times to get the elastic completely inside the casing. Sew over the opening to close it up, and you can set the bodice aside for now. To make the circle skirt, fold your remaining fabric in half one way, then fold it in half again in the opposite direction and smooth it all out. So at this point you should have 2 folds along one edge of the fabric and 1 fold along the connecting edge, and the other sides will look a bit choppy from where we've cut the other pieces. Now measure your waist where you want the skirt to start, and mine was about 34.5 inches. Divide your number by 6.28. I calculated 5.49, so I just rounded that up to 5.5. Subtract a 1/2 inch from your number to build in seam allowance, and you'll need this final calculation to draw the waist of your skirt. I got 5 inches. Start measuring from the corner of the fabric where those folded edges meet and make a mark at the number you calculated, so I'm making my mark at 5 inches. Then swivel the tape measure and keep making more marks at the same number until you've created a quarter circle shape, which you'll connect. Decide how long you want your skirt to be and add an inch to that number for seam allowance, then start measuring from the line you drew for the waist and make a mark at that number. Move the tape measure along the curve and keep making marks to create another quarter circle. My ideal length is 19 inches, so I'm marking at 20 inches. Connect the marks and cut out the skirt, first along the waist and then along the length. You'll have created a giant circle shape, but lay it back out in a half circle to attach it to the bodice. Turn the skirt inside out and the bodice right side out, and slide the bodice neck first in through the waist of the skirt. Match up the side seam of the bodice to the side of the skirt and pin it together with the correct sides facing together. Pin together the opposite side too, then pin around the rest of the waist in smaller increments and sew to attach the pieces together with your stretch or zigzag stitch. To hem the sleeves, turn the dress inside out and double fold the raw edge over a 1/4 inch at a time, pin it down, and sew to secure the hems. And to hem the bottom edge of the skirt, since it's so large, I like to double fold and pin only a few inches and sew that down to start. And once I get to the unpinned part, I'll double fold and then sew a few inches at a time, repeating the process of folding and sewing until the whole hem is sewn down, which I think takes less time than pinning it all first, but you could do that if you want to. And now you're all done with this dress, so wear it proudly. Thank y'all for watching and have a great day.
I got it.
Let me blow away now. I'm so glad I have shorts on.